What's up? Hello, everybody. In this video, we're going to be talking about injury prevention. Now, we know that there is the tried and true methods of injury prevention, which is a good warm up, a good cool down, making sure you're getting adequate sleep, making sure that your body is ready for that workout. But I'm going to take kind of a broader or more holistic approach to looking at the body on other ways or other questions to ask yourself on how to prevent injuries from happening. So first question is, do you have any chronic aches or pains? So, because if you have a chronic injury somewhere, let's say your shoulder chronically hurts or it's hurt for a long time, then you're likely using other movement patterns that are going to increase a risk of some sort of surrounding compensatory injury. So, addressing your chronic aches and pains is a great way to mitigate future injuries from happening. Along those lines is, do you experience any chronic tightness? So if you, let's go back to that shoulder example. If your shoulder always just feels a little bit stiff, but it's not quite painful, take care of that chronic tightness, because underlying that is if you can't move through an area because it's tight, let's say you need to go into like a throwing type of motion, but it hurts there. If you do that movement at a higher velocity or a higher power output, then there's going to be some risk of injury or some risk of movement compensation that can feed into that chronic tightness. Third one, more from a psychological standpoint, is do you worry about getting injured? So I'm huge on mindset is key, and believing that your body is strong and resilient is key to a lot of injury prevention and also getting out of an injury once it happens. But if you have a fear of injury, that is going to permeate into how you move, into the activities that you do. So we need to get over that mindset of being afraid of doing things. And the way to do that is to gradually push yourself into exercises or into activities that you're worried about that are going to cause pain. If you're worried about sprinting, for example, well, then start out with a jog into a run into a 30-second sprint. So don't go right into sprinting. Make sure you're properly warmed up and then get into that sprint. Next is, do you avoid certain activities? If you avoid going out for a long run with a friend, or if you avoid certain movements in the gym because they don't feel great, you need to fix those things. And for me, for a long time, I hated doing hamstring work because it felt like my hamstrings were going to cramp up all the time. And it was once I pushed into that, doing hamstring work, making sure that it wasn't cramping and causing pain, but still going into it, forcing yourself into those things, is where I started to learn about why my hamstrings felt weak, why they felt like they were going to cramp, other asymmetries that kind of were around the injury. So if you're avoiding certain activities, again, you've got to push into those boundaries of the things that you're avoiding. Next is, do you have good symmetry side to side? Now, when we get to the elite level of performance, some asymmetry is going to be present. But ultimately, we want to have good symmetry throughout our body. So strength on your left side compared to your right, strength through your left leg compared to your right leg. The ability to have symmetry is going to make you more well-rounded, and it's going to give you better balance and better overall stability for unilateral or one-sided movements. So making sure that your upper body and your lower body have good strength and balance there. Ultimately, the lower body is going to be stronger than the upper body, or it needs to be, because we need a stronger base position. But making sure the ratios of symmetry, upper and lower, left and right, are similar is very important. And then lastly, do any old injuries continue to impact you? And this kind of goes along with the chronic aches and pains. But if you have an old injury, let's say you had knee surgery 5 years ago, and you're still offloading that knee, so maybe more of a chronic ache and pain, um, there's a problem there, and that's going to show up either at the site of that injury, so at the knee again, or it might show up in your low back or in your hip or your ankle, somewhere along the chain, that when you're offloading the pattern that needs to be used, it's going to show up as extra stress or extra strain somewhere else. So these questions that I've come up with are the result of relatively 15 years of treating pain, and people always wondering, why did this happen? How can I get out of the injury? And asking yourself about chronic aches and pains, chronic tightness, fear of getting injured, avoiding certain movements. The magic is in those things. When you start to feel more confident with those questions, then your overall risk of injury is significantly going to decrease. So think about these things. If you need to write down some journal, some answers on it, I think that's the ultimate way to being honest with yourself and figuring out where your weak points are to then avoid future injury.